Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you're doing well. So, in this movie on Netflix about World War One called All Quiet on the Western Front, there is a scene where the Germans, in the final hours, are raiding the trenches of the French. And there's a scene where the German soldiers discover some food, provisions of the French sausages, honey, jams, basic things that we often take for granted. And the way they eat like they're very ravenous. They are obviously very hungry, and they have a smorgasbord temporarily. What I thought was interesting about this scene is they are so close to death. Death is literally all around them, and they want to eat, right? And I thought, if you're gonna eat but then you die, it's like weird, like not even fully digested food and then you die. But then I thought about how when they're going to execute someone on death row, they get a final meal. And sometimes those final meals are quite unique. When we think of food, we recognize comfort. And when you don't have food, it's very pleasing to see some types of bold flavored foods on the table. For example, in Harry Potter, when Harry and Ron, who didn't have much and were not fed very fancifully, they go to Hogwarts and there's a smorgasbord of food. So, like cakes and rolls and goodies, right? And it makes it comforting. There's something beautiful about a nice table spread. I like food scenes a lot. In the books of Game of Thrones, the food scenes are very well written. And I even bought the Game of Thrones cookbook. George R.R. Martin did a great job with describing food in a way that actually makes you hungry. And so in this scene, it also had that element of getting hungry while you watch it, where you can feel almost how the soldiers felt. Then further, if you examine how we go without in Ramadan, and then when we can break our fast, the food has an even better taste. You appreciate it even more. And then further, you think about how gluttony is a sin, and how we have morbidly obese people who enjoy killing themselves through food and make all sorts of excuses and are being enabled by the fat acceptance movement. And how it's very decadent to be able to be fat and poor. Whereas the soldiers who are risking their lives are thankful for some salami and food. It's fascinating. The food plays a key role in this because later on, the German delegates and the French delegates have access to good food. On the train, the Germans have hard-boiled eggs, brie, grapes, candied figs, coffee, and the sounds of them eating. They're very well fed. And the French, when they're trying to get the Germans to sign the armistice papers, one of the French figures, he asks the assistant, the waiter, to eat the croissants and see if they were made today. And he finds out they were not, and he seems disappointed. What I found very intriguing about the food contrast in the movie was the elites have access to the good food and they're worried about not getting dirty, where the men who are literally in the trenches are like just going all out when they see honey and so many things we get in the grocery store. It really gives you the insight of who's suffering on the field, the hierarchy, the decision making. And then there's the German figure who he's bald headed, has a big mustache. His father was a renowned warrior, soldier, and he wants glory, and he is upset that the Kaiser abdicated to the French, right? That there's going to be a peace. And he eats quite well and is able to toss some meat to his dog. And he often scrapes stuff off of his uniform to be clean. And as he smokes a cigarette and sees the smoke on the horizon of the battlefield where his soldiers are getting blasted by the French tanks and whatnot. And that to me was even more potent. Yes, if you're higher rank, you get access to more food. This is how it is. Even when I worked in restaurants, the dishwashers didn't eat as good as the chefs. And a lot of the chefs would be stuffing their faces 3 or 4 times in a shift, while if we were caught eating, a couple of French fries and sharing it, or we were eating any type of way, we'd get reprimanded. We had to be on a different type of allowance of what we're supposed to behave like. And that always bothered me, gluttony. Those who would stuff themselves while others were without didn't really share. And I feel like in that film, when they contrast what kind of food the soldiers are eating and how grateful they are versus how the elites are eating, and they don't even seem appreciative, you're like, huh. How are they getting access to that high quality food but they can't feed the soldiers the same? Earlier, there's another character, and he complains how he can't escape from being given radish bread. Don't know what that is, but he wants something else to eat besides the same ration. And then there's another scene where, towards the end, Kat and Paul are bringing soup to their wounded friend. And in the scene where the cook is filling up the bowls of the soldier, it's chaos. They want to get some food, they want some soup. And food, not being able to feed your soldiers properly, can lead to mutinies. When I read Caesar's Gallic Wars, they complained for a while, some of the soldiers, he said, about the soup they'd eat wasn't very filling. And when you get hungry, you start to get angry. And I thought about how during Ramadan, some people, they get moody when they're hungry because our emotions change and how much what we eat affects our overall emotional disposition. And I really got to give it to the directors and how they did that scene, because it reminded me further of just when I first moved to California and I worked in a very fancy Italian restaurant, and it was the first time. See, because I didn't always know how to cook. I taught myself how to cook. Self-made chef, really. And it was the first time I had tasted food that good, and I could have as much of it as I wanted. They called it family meal in the restaurant. And I was like, wow, I can have like 2 or 3 bowls. This is amazing. While others were kind of complaining like, there's not enough salt, or the bread is this, or like, I was just super thankful. Again, it was just very well done, because it made me think about my own life, made me think about how food is represented so well in other books and films, and I want to give them credit for that scene, because this was unique, because I can't think of another movie where you thought about soldiers discovering some great food in the trenches. Now, in Lord of the Rings, Pip and his brother, right, Merry and Pip, they come across, while everything's flooded, after the trees have attacked everything and flooded the Mordor area type, I think it was. Mary and Pip discover a storage room of food filled with cheese and sausages. And they get super excited, and they're really happy. And I really liked how that was represented. So again, when we think about food in our lives and how grateful we must be, we begin to recognize how blessed we are by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when we have peace. And we're able to produce some awesome breads, create great cheeses, have access to organic grass-fed raw milk. All the wonderful things, right? But when they're raiding the trenches and they come across that and they kind of all pause at each other and they're like, and the fact that they're licking their fingers after they have like ash, gunpowder, all this stuff all over them, mud, you name it, blood. They're just so happy to have this option of being able to eat something. And the humanness of them comes out, where their killer mode is turned off for a second, and now it's, the food is here, let's enjoy it. It's fascinating. Really, truly. That's one of my favorite scenes, because there's so much you can think about when you rewatch it. And how I probably too, God forbid I'd ever be in a situation like that, but I too would be like that. I used to have dreams about having access to a big old storage house of food. Today, I'm so thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for knowing how to cook and having access to good ingredients. I've mentioned many times that for me, you have one of the best husbands in the world if he's able to buy you groceries. Organic, non-GMO groceries. And how women should focus on, can he provide you with high quality food? Not about handbags and makeup and vacations and whatnot. You should be thankful every single day if he is able to provide you with healthy food. And that we should be totally thankful for all the farmers who put in so that we can eat their labor. We have markets where we can get food from all across the world. When you're in the trenches getting bombed, seeing horrors, hearing people say their last words, and there's a jar of honey and a slice of cheese, that's like a moment of bliss. And how many times we open up our fridge and it's full of food. Open up our freezer and it's packed full. And we don't appreciate it. I remember standing in the line during the lockdowns and getting boxes of food from the food bank. I was so grateful for having a head of cabbage to make cabbage soup, some carrots and potatoes, eggs, and a good gallon of Jersey milk, rice and beans, the simple staples of life that keep us going. And you can make all kinds of food from it if you only take the time and learn and perfect your culinary skills. It's quite fascinating. And then also Kat, the character, he tells Paul while they're pooping what it would be like, to go back to regular society. And then he mentions eating fried potatoes with the skins on. Food plays an interesting role in this movie. And I feel like it subtly tells us to be appreciative. And if you notice how in zombie movies, apocalyptic scenes, people finding canned food, being able to hunt something, it's one of the prime concerns. It's fascinating when you think about how much of our life revolves around food. Necessarily so. Necessarily so. Very deep. Insightful. May we always be grateful for what we have. We must remain grateful. By the way, if you'd like to join my blog, it's www.subscribestarter.com/MilahanArchive. I hope to see you there. Have a good day.